with us, four of us here, I guess, today. Teresa Phillips, Joe Schofield, Glenn Sikorsky, and myself, Phil Measy. So we have a quorum. I'm hoping that John Grega is going to turn up at some point. But in any event, I'd like to get started. The February 13th minutes, you all should have had a chance to look at them, review them, and I think we're getting these minutes into a little bit better shape than we've had them in before, thanks to Teresa. Any comments, any additions, corrections to the minutes for the February 13th meeting?
Nope.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve them. Glenn?
Have a motion to approve.
Yeah, I have a second?
Second.
Teresa seconds it. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Glenn, you're on.
Okay, approved on middle of February, 46,703 in expenditures. End of February, 13,673, so total of 59,60,000. I'm still reconciling the reserve balances as requested by the board,
Okay.
as I need to gather the past financial statements, and I'm working with people on that, so hopefully next meeting or the one after, for sure. I did meet with Scott at Castle, because we've put in, I think, Phil, you've heard a request to bump up our 90,000 expenditure request to 120,000.
Right.
Because as we've grown as a community with cash flow and issuing the bills from accounts payable, it makes it a little tight, and we want to keep as our vendors happy, right? Happy vendors, I provide good services. So that's in the works, because Scott will be working on that, right, to further that along. And they did present me with a historical analysis, and our expenditures are increasing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a worthwhile request to get that in.
Okay.
All right?
The, I guess, from a cash point of view, I think we don't have a problem. I mean,
No.
we've got plenty of cash. Is that
Yes.
right?
Not a problem.
Now, do we have to, my question is, do we have to alter the O&M agreement?
Yes.
We do, okay. So we would have to pass that by the board? Do we have, Scott, you want to get up there and tell
Yes.
us?
Scott Charnock, Community Association Manager. Yes, the O&M agreement is restrictive on the retainer amount. It sets it at $90,000.
Okay,
So we're going to have to ask the board to amend that document, take it up to 120,000 with a provision in there is it will be reviewed periodically for adjustments that may be needed. So we're just going to need to have them do that.
okay, so who has responsibility for moving that up to the board? I guess,
We have to decide on that.
okay. It seems to me, can we have a motion here to do that, and then have Frank, well, I don't know, yeah, and have Frank deliver it to the board? Yeah,
Yes, he said yes.
okay.
Good. Thank you.
Will you, who will draft what we have to send to the board? I just want to make sure we're getting this done.
I can do that.
You can do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Teresa, you haven't been in on this discussion. Do you have any questions about it? This is just upping. We have this kind of retainer that we have with Castle, really, and we just need to increase it because there is extra activity. If
Do we do the motion now, or?
yes, I think we do the motion now. Yeah. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Well, then I'll put in a motion to increase the expenditure funding to 120,000 on the O&M agreement, with provision to adjust at periodic times.
Okay.
I'll second.
And that's second.
I'd like to amend that,
Yeah.
that it's to be prepared by Scott.
By Scott, yes,
Yes,
thank you.
Okay. And you'll second that, okay. So we have a motion to do that. I think that should cover us, and I guess we're in a position where we can't get it to the next board meeting. Is that right, Frank, that normally it's got to be 10 days in advance? So that one's already passed, so it'll have to be the board meeting after this one, or
Okay.
the next one, okay? Any further discussion of that? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it passes, 4-0.
That's
So-
it for the financial report.
Yeah, Glenn, one other thing. At some point, can we start developing, and we used to do this, go back to have a sheet that shows where we stand with each of our expenditures and where we stand versus budget? I think that the system produces such a report, and I think it would be of value to the committee to have that rather than just total expenditures.
Okay,
I can help out with that, Glenn. Once I get the financials, what I can do is provide that in my packet
Yeah,
on behalf of Glenn
yeah,
for the meeting.
okay.
okay,
Yeah,
I
All
can
right.
do that.
yeah.
good.
Yeah, and if we all, and that I assume would go out in advance as your stuff is now going, so that we'd all have a chance to review it? Okay.
All right,
Yeah, because I think, we used to look at, where do we stand on various expenditures, because we are now spending more money. It would be interesting to see where that gets going.
obviously.
Yep.
Okay, well,
All right.
we can do that.
All right. All right, that covers the financial report. We will move on. We have Nancy Hall here, who we've invited to come, and she has a proposal, and I think you've had some written material, but Nancy, I think a presentation by you about this and why it's needed.
Well, thank you. I hope that everybody had a chance to look at the background information, and I know that Scott has provided some of the prices and so forth on what this would cost to do. By way of a little bit of background, Lee County does provide public transportation to ADA qualified residents. Passport bus service is done through the Lee Trans system. There was formerly a second system, Goodwheels, which is effectively out of business now. The difference between the two was that Goodwheels did door-to-door service and did it very well when they had funding to do it. Passport, the door-to-door service is a bit problematic. Probably like most of you, I saw from time to time Goodwheels. They could be anywhere in the community, and you may have seen the Passport bus on Colonial or Daniels. The fact that there's a bus line that runs on Colonial is what gives us the ability to have our residents use the Passport bus service. My specific awareness that this was an issue in Pelican came up with my involvement with the quote Beacon group. It's a group of visually impaired residents in Pelican. Several of those individuals have qualified, because you have to qualify to have this service, ADA service from the county. And several of them have qualified for it. They routinely, at this point, because Passport only services the front part of our community. Most of them live elsewhere in the community. And what happens is a friend or a family member or somebody will drive them to the gate and then wait for the Passport bus to come in. And sometimes these could be extended waits, because Passport goes by whatever reservation, so they're not necessarily always on exact time. It depends on how many other stops they have and so forth. So our residents have had to put that in their schedule. A lot of them would opt to use this service by themselves and not have to have a family member go with them. Keeping that in mind, what I thought was it would be, and I've talked to the group about it, and they agree that having a bench situated somewhere in Pelican between the gate and tree line made some sense. That way they could wait on the bench for the Passport bus. They could sit on the bench when the passport bus comes back, till their friend or loved one gets back there. Because again, they could call their family member and say, hey, I'm headed back home, but they wouldn't know exactly when they were going to get there. So that's one of the reasons I want the bench. The other thing, just to bring you up to date, Lee County was very concerned about the ability to continue to service the ADA community. So they did pass emergency funding, and Lee County is going to make use of the Goodwill's drivers and their buses, but it's a limited amount of funding. And then they're still limited to only being able to travel into a community that's within 3/4 of a mile of the original bus route, which is a problem. There is a premium service, and by premium, instead of the $2 fare they charge, it's like, I think $6 or $8. But getting that door-to-door part of their thing has been nearly impossible for anybody that I've talked to. So people have been relying on the regular passport bus. So with that in mind, what I have proposed today is that we put a bench in on the exit side of Pelican, between the gate and tree line. And I've called it a bunch of names here, the pagoda, the arches, but it's right after the big turn as you would go out. There's a little indentation. And I've talked to Scott, and he agrees that we could place it right by where that trellis effect is. When I looked at it, it looked like it would be pretty easy to do. Location-wise, also, there's a lot of shrubbery, not very much of the shrubbery that's in front is there, so it wouldn't be a big removal process for that. So what's involved is the bench, a concrete slab, and then at some point, the people who use it or propose to use it would like to have some kind of awning or covering over it for the elements. So I have suggested that we could consider doing that. So, and this isn't just for the visually impaired, it's any ADA resident in Pelican that applies and gets permission from the county can take advantage of this. And I think it's probably something we've needed for a while. So I really appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Nancy, do we have any idea of how many people might be using this service?
I can speak for the visually impaired
Yeah.
group. I think there's probably only about 6 or 8 of them, but I know, given the amount of time that I've seen Goodwills in to pick up people recovering from surgeries, doing rehab work and that kind of stuff. I mean, we see the Goodwills, or had seen the Goodwills vehicles in there pretty regularly, on a daily basis. So I would think it probably will get pretty good use.
Yeah, I might add that the Beacon group is a focused group, but there are a number of other residents within Pelican. I have a friend down the street who broke his hip, and he can't drive, probably will never drive again. I don't think he's ever going to walk again without a walker. And he's dependent on his wife to get him everywhere. And if he could get transportation, he could have that sense of mobility and doing it on his own, which I have to say, living with a wife who lost her vision, that's critically important to her, is having that ability to function on her own. And it was great. This morning I had to drive her to church, so I was late to a meeting that I wanted to attend, and she somehow wrangled a ride home, which was great. I got to do some work around the house. But there's a strong sense of independence with these folks, and Goodwills caught people off guard. My wife was in North Fort Myers when they went out of business. Fortunately, I was home and could pick her up. But I can't tell you how many people are up there scrambling and are still scrambling. They're employees. Most of them are blind, and they're using Goodwills. So it's a community issue. Pelican Preserve, I would expect, has a lot more people that would utilize that service. not just our Beacon group. It's incredibly hard to get on that list to be approved. It took my wife 15 months to get approved for that service.
That was Goodwills.
That was Good Wheels, I'm sorry. Good
Mhm.
Wheels, yeah, which
Yeah.
Lee County is now taking over.
Passport was a little easier for everybody, but it was still complicated. Apparently, the woman who was doing the applications got a little full of herself, and it took a discussion with one of the county commissioners to say, hey, you know, what does it take to get approval? And I guess the approvals have been moving a little more quickly.
They have, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, actually, we got Hammond and fellows.
Cecil, right?
Yeah, Cecil, Hammond and Cecil both got involved with that.
Mhm.
They got the guy who runs Lee, I think the fellow who runs Lee Transit now is a personal friend of my wife's. He calls, they call, and it's a growing relationship. I'm getting jealous.
Nancy, how does the resident coordinate now with Passport, though? Is there like a schedule, or like, do they have to be at that bench at certain times, or?
Yeah, they would have to be there at a certain time. They would coordinate with the bus service, their special numbers that they call. And again, this is unfortunately not as good a service as Goodwills was, but you call and you basically tell them you need to be there an hour ahead of when you need to be there so that you can ensure being picked up, because they don't know the bus route when you call, you know, how many other places they actually have to stop, or how many more people might be on it. So, just to give yourself time, people have been adding an hour to their
Yeah,
appointment
and
time.
that's part of the reason why they're looking for something to cover the bench, because you can't, these folks are not reliable. Running a bus service is hard, I think, to begin with, and when you have a special service, reliability is difficult. People can arrange rides to get there, but that's not always easy either. So if they can get a ride up by a friend or a family member, they're willing to sit there, and they will have to sit there just to be safe. So something that protects them from the elements is good.
And I think the idea of, if you would approve it, I think once it's done, that would be an opportune time to let the community know that it's there.
Available, yeah.
Available, and that there is a process with the county for approval.
Now, are my numbers right here, that the total cost would be about $12,500? Does that sound right?
Can I ask Scott to?
The 9850 plus 2758?
That's what
I'm sorry. That's what happens when you don't do color copy.
Yeah.
The cost is farther down on the page. The vendor included it with the redesign of the concrete structure at the crosswalk. But if
Okay.
you look down the list a little bit, it says $400.
Yes, okay.
It's $400 for the 4x8 concrete pad. It'll be another $588 plus freight for the bench. And if the trellis replacement is approved, then it would be as simple as putting a sunscreen covering over the one trellis to provide shade for that bench
So we're talking about $1,500 or something?
at the most.
At the
Yes.
most?
Yeah.
Okay.
How much, sorry?
1,500.
Ooh.
So,
When I saw the 12,500, I
Yeah.
was concerned.
I'm
and
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that,
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well,
I was gonna ask, but I think it's no, won't bother doing it, whether this was something, and Nancy would know whether this was something we could take out of the bond funds, but I don't think it's necessary at that level of
No, it's-
spending.
I
Is that,
wouldn't think so, but
is that something you think we could charge the bond fund for? Is it?
that I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, that was for, I guess my understanding of exactly what that covers was pretty limited, but I'm thinking at the price we're talking about, it's probably not worth worrying about.
no.
Yeah.
For 50, no.
for 15.
I was looking at those numbers too
Yeah,
and
yeah,
thought,
yeah. Okay.
okay, well, my wife has MS and she's in a wheelchair most times. I just have to take her where
Mhm.
we go, and to get her there even and get her up, and I assume Passport has lifts and everything
Yes.
like Goodwill
Yes.
Wheels did? So, though, that part of our community would have that availability also, right?
Yes.
If they wanted to.
Was she a Good Wheels user, Glenn?
No, no, but because I'm the primary caregiver, so
Mhm.
that's how I did it. But
Mhm.
But if one day Glenn couldn't,
I always wonder about that. That's
Yeah.
a
one
big.
day he couldn't, then
There's people there that the caregiver's gone, and what do they do?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
I'll make a comment. I've seen these folks over at the lighthouse, and these drivers help these people get out of the vehicle. They make sure they get in the building. When they come to pick
Yes.
them up, they come in the building. They actually get them, they wheel them back out. I mean, this is really very personal care. I thought that was above and beyond, but that's what they're trained to do.
Yes.
So it's not just somebody saying, hey, I'm here, get in the bus. They're taking care of all that. And I think the independence that these people get is not something I ever thought about or appreciated. It's just, it's really important to these folks. And I feel most of us come to Pelican Preserve, we're able to do things, but we do have spouses at times that really can't. So
or
I think-
over time,
Well, a lot of us.
Well, no, I know.
Well, yeah, we grow into that,
Yeah.
unfortunately, too.
Yeah.
There was a fella I know that was driving in Shell Point. They have their own internal system, right? I don't know eventually if Pelican Preserve will get to that point,
We
right?
might.
We might, but
We
in the meantime, I can't see why this would hurt if we could use, because I assume Passport's part of the Lee Transit system, right?
It is.
yes, it
Yes.
is.
Okay.
Yep.
And they're gonna be around. We're not
Yes.
gonna have a bench there in 6 months like Good Wheels did and not being utilized.
All right.
So
Yeah,
it's,
That's
okay.
good. Teresa, any questions from you? I would entertain a motion to implement this bench for a price not to exceed $1,500.
I'd be happy to make a motion to the board that we move forward to putting a bench and a covering over for folks that need that at the entrance to the Pelican Preserve community,
For a price not to exceed,
for a price not to exceed, say, $1,600.
or 1,500.
15.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a motion.
Yeah.
We have a second.
Second.
Teresa seconds it. Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Want to be sure. If not, all in favor?
I
Aye.
do have one question
Yes,
for
sure.
Scott. Is the cap of 1,500, is
That'll
that
be
gonna
full.
do it?
That'll do it.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes 4-0.
Well, thank you very much.
That's great, yeah.
You're
and-
welcome.
And I think it's certainly something we should be doing.
Yeah.
So I think it makes a lot of sense. Nancy, thank you for
Doing that.
bringing that to our attention. And I think, Frank, I think that it can be approved here, right? That doesn't have to go to the board since it's only $1,500. It's a non-budget item. But I think that Chris could, Chris can approve it, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
You're
Yep.
welcome.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on. Association manager report.
Good afternoon. Danielle with Securitas is here, so I'd like her to go first because I know she needs to get to another meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Since there's only a few of you today, I'll
Oh, we
handle
get,
it.
I got
Oh,
one.
you've got 'em.
yeah, thank you.
Got 'em.
We're good.
So,
Scott's on top of things. So as you can see, our numbers from last month haven't really changed as a total. Not drastically anyway, but our guest entrances have gone up by about 2,000, so we'll be interested to see what March looks like.
March is usually our heaviest month, is that right?
Yeah, Yeah, it looks like March is usually the top, so we'll see.
Mhm.
We'll see how it looks. Outside of that, I don't think there's anything for me to bring up unless there's any.
Scott, you mentioned this morning at the president's meeting that pretty well taking the trap gate out for the hours we do helps to alleviate the really big backup problems. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I think,
it seems to be working well. They haven't reported really any issues with
Mhm.
traffic out front, aside from the normal, guest lane issue, but it seems to be doing well, so.
good.
I have a question, and it's a personal experience. I came through, and I followed the rules, and I waited for the trap gate to go up, but a car had gone through in front of me, and the trap gate went up, and it stayed up. And then the gate allowed me to pull in, and I'm sitting there, and the trap gate's still up, and I'm wondering, should I go or not go? I started to go, and my wife started screaming, the gate's coming down on us. Well, it came down, she said about 1 or 2 feet from the car now. Since she can't see that well, I don't know what she really saw, but it did start to come down, and I wondered if we checked the functionality or what would cause that, because that's happened to me twice. And I don't think I'm doing anything that's wrong, but I get really scared when that gate doesn't come down, and I know it should have come down.
Right.
The gate system is on a maintenance agreement, and it's reviewed and checked every month.
Okay.
If there's an issue during that time between the checks, then we call for service.
If it
But
comes
that's
down
the
on my-
first,
if it
that's
comes
the
down
first
on my-
I've heard of it.
Okay, if it comes down on my car, what do I do?
Well,
Make sure they got good pictures.
yes.
Yes.
And we'll have you on film, so if you were trying to run the gate, we'll know that.
Well, I don't
No.
run the gate.
I gotta ask, do you wait till the gate comes down of the preceding car and then you go to the scanner?
Once the first car is cleared through, that second gate should come down.
You're
Before
talking the
first
second gate?
I'm talking the second gate,
Oh.
not the first gate. I
Okay.
wait for the first gate to go
So
up.
this is after
Then I pull
hours.
into the trap, this is
Yeah.
after 5 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's still up there, and then I debate, and when I finally decide I'm going, I'm gonna tell you, I don't dilly-dally. I don't burn rubber, my car won't.
Well,
As we've said to other people, if there are any incidents at the gate, I think you need to keep track of what time they occurred so that you can report them to Castle and they can look into it.
Well, the picture I gave you this morning, I took a picture of it.
Oh, okay.
That was the time the gates, you see, I wasn't in the trap at that point, but the gate was up. It was dark. I think it was 7:22 on a Sunday evening.
you gotta get home early.
It's not my bedtime till 7:45.
Okay.
Okay. Danielle?
Mr. Chairman, could I bring up about the bicycle entry?
Oh,
while
yes.
Oh, yes.
Danielle's
Yes,
here?
yes, I think that's appropriate.
And I don't know that there's anything we can do about it. I just know that, actually this happened in January because I forgot to bring it up at the last meeting. But some of our residents were coming in from going to dinner, so it was about 10 o'clock at night. And they were following 2 kids on bicycles with hoodies on. And these kids turned into Trieste, and then they were going up Ravenna. And at first, they were just gonna ignore it and go about their way, but they decided to make a U-turn and go see where these kids ended up. And they were in the parking lot at Ravenna and had gotten off of their bikes, and it appeared to the residents like they were getting ready to go try to pilfer through the vehicles in the parking lot there. But when one of the residents got out of his Suburban, and he's very huge, I think it scared them, and they got back on their bikes and they took off. And when they left through the entry side. So it appeared to them that they know about the cameras and were going out when the cameras were facing were facing their backside, I guess, is what I could say. So I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't know if there's anything we could do to limit bicycles coming in.
There is with a substantial investment.
Oh, okay.
You would have to be prepared to spend tens of thousands of dollars,
Mhm.
because even if you put gates at those structures, which would cost a pretty penny because they have to be electronically activated, anybody can walk around those structures, so then you would have to put up a
Yeah.
6-foot fence and decorative fence to
Mhm.
block in that whole area.
Mhm.
So, I know when this was brought up in the past, it just wasn't cost
Yeah,
effective.
yeah.
Mhm.
What I would recommend telling those residents is that's why they call the roving patrol officer and we post that number, because then they'll go take care of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's why we have that individual on 24/7. So if something does come up, any resident can call that number, report the issue, and then they'll drive over and address it. And if the police are needed, then they'll call the police.
I understand,
Yeah.
and I don't have a problem with any of that. It's just that in this particular instance, they did call the rover, and these kids were already back on their bikes and taking off for the front before he even
He
got
got
there.
there.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
Can I ask a question? Would it be possible to put shrubbery up instead of a gate? And would it be possible to put just a decorative gate that's open during the day and manually closed and locked in place at night? That wouldn't cost an exorbitant amount of money.
Well, number one.
Scott, you probably, it'd be
I'm
good for
sorry.
you to get up to the microphone.
Here's your challenge. You don't have enough green space to put shrubbery where we were gonna need the fence. You have very narrow areas that are curbed or very little areas for additional plant material. If you're going to do this, and if you want to create a barrier, plant material is not it's really not the way to go.
I'd put
Because-
a couple bougainvillea with those spikes in it.
Yes, and and then there's an issue with our residents.
Well, I don't think residents are gonna be walking in and out after 6 or 7 o'clock or bicycles.
Yes, they
And
do.
if they do, they could come through the regular guard gate.
But see, you gotta keep in mind that if they're checking in a resident, a bicycle can ride around the gates and come into the community. We gotta keep in mind that this is a controlled access community. It is not a secured community. It will never be a secured community unless we get really creative on funding and build higher walls. And the only secured compound that I'm aware of is federal court buildings, US Treasury buildings, Fort Knox.
that's
Or if you live in a tower.
Yeah.
If you live in a tower, you can control access into that structure. In an HOA, there's no way. Best thing to do is what the police say to all of our residents: when you see something, call. And that would have been the best thing to do. Sure, it would take the police a little time to get there too, and they
Oh,
might
sure.
be gone. But unless a resident's willing to put themselves in a very precarious position, I would just, hey, what are you guys doing? And that'll be enough. Does that happen? Happens to almost any community.
The
Yeah.
best
So-
result
Oh, I
is to get them-
agree.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
we're not
There's-
alone.
With high
Yeah.
walls.
Yeah, even the ones with high walls,
Yep.
you know,
And
and,
they get in.
And the bushes too.
yeah.
They,
Yeah.
uh,
The Safety and Security Work Group had looked at this a couple of times in the past years, and as Scott indicated, we just thought it was not something.
And we know the cost that's going to be involved in it.
Yeah.
You can create a different gate all you want, but putting in a fence, you're gonna have to look at funding about $50,000 without the gates. So what additional security are you receiving over that expenditure, and is it gonna make a difference?
No, I totally
Yeah.
agree. If they wanna get in, they're gonna get in
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if there was any way we could make it more difficult for them.
There definitely is. There definitely is, but it requires funding.
Well, I must say too, locking the cars is such a no
Yeah.
matter where you live
Yeah,
today,
absolutely.
right? And, because these are not ambitious criminals, kids that are looking for an easy take, right?
Right.
And if that door's locked, they move on. I don't want anybody doing that in my parking lot, but
Yep.
how do you prevent it? I don't
Right.
know. It's difficult.
And maybe that's something that the safety and security work group could put into their monthly
You mean,
little blurb that
The-
they put
one
on
of- one of the-
email.
yeah, we could put it in. Mm-hmm.
It's on the news almost
I
different.
have another suggestion for them too.
Okay, this is, yeah, that could go in in one of our safety blasts.
Yep, good.
Okay, any other questions about that? If not, Danielle, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Teresa, did you say you had let the minutes show that John Grega just joined the meeting?
It was for their safety blurb. It
Oh.
doesn't have anything to do with Danielle. She
Okay,
can go to her other meeting.
okay.
Thank you.
Why don't we wait till we get to the Safety and Security Work Group
Sure.
report, which I will give in place of Ron.
All
Can
right.
take any notes.
Oh,
Okay, Scott?
you're gonna give it in place of Ron? Good,
Huh?
because he told me that I was supposed to give it, but that's
Oh,
okay.
no.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna let, I will let you give it. I will let you give it.
Oh, just in case I'm not still here by the time that meeting comes, that portion of the meeting comes.
Okay. Anyway, but you're on for
All right.
your regular.
You can disregard the first portion. Nancy covered that completely, and you've already approved that expenditure. The next portion is the Boardwalk Engineering Assessment Report.
That big folder.
This is strictly informational. It's quite lengthy, it's good reading.
It is?
It's-
Well, it brings you up to date what our structure looks like
Yep.
after 16 years. And the reason why we're gonna need to have it replaced. So what I would recommend at this time is that all of you would consider the engineering proposal to go ahead and begin the structural drawing plans for permitting. That does not mean we're gonna move ahead for permitting, but it will allow me to get a better number than a budgetary number that I'm expecting from the contractor by tomorrow. I will forward that to all of you once I receive it. But again, that's budgetary based on this report, not based on engineering drawings. So as we learned in the past with the bridges, that could change the price $10,000 to $12,000 on this overall project. So again, I'll have that number for you tomorrow.
Okay, and that number is for actually doing the construction plans, is that it?
Yes. And the plan is, based on the preliminary report, is to do the same thing that we did with the bridges. The piers are good. There are some piers that are going to have to be reinforced, like bridge number 3 behind the sales center. And there's gonna be a couple that have to be added. But what they're gonna do is they're gonna take off the entire top deck, the railing, the stringers. The stringers are the vertical pieces that run along the piers to attach the decking, and they're going to use a heftier material for the curbing. Same construction and design.
Okay.
And again, they'll probably not have, and it'll be up to this committee, whether you do that observation deck or not. Not sure what that serves. I don't see anybody up there, maybe the grandkids on occasion, but
Yeah. They'll price that out separately?
they're gonna price it both ways, yes.
Yeah, give,
Well, I would ask if either of our engineers, having looked at this report, have questions that they want to ask Scott.
This is a great example of not putting a screw in right. I'll say
Yeah.
that much. He missed the whole thing.
Yeah,
But obviously, the wood underneath is not great.
yeah, it looks terrible.
I appreciate the observation because I see no residents climbing up there at all, even bird watchers.
Yeah.
Because I don't see there's a whole lot of birds in that particular area. They all go back to the other part of the dead end and get great pictures, but I don't know why we'd want to spend money to rebuild that, quite frankly.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I'm not an engineer, but I do have a question.
Sure.
Was this the part that in the last meeting, we made the motion that said if
that
the
was-
engineer said that it was unsafe for golf carts, we were gonna restrict golf carts?
Yes.
It
Yes.
does not say that in the report.
No, it does not. I looked for it in there because, yeah.
Well, I didn't see anything specific.
Yeah,
No.
no, I
Well,
didn't
I
either.
went and walked it, and I looked at it very closely, and I agree it's not in great shape, but I saw nothing and I felt nothing that made me think I was unsafe walking on it,
Mhm.
so.
Well, of course,
I
the-
talked to Geppert and said, unless the engineer says we can't use it, I don't see a reason
Mhm.
why we would stop.
the question was not really people walking on it, though, it was the golf
The
carts
golf
going on
carts,
it.
right.
But even then, I saw
Well,
nothing.
I drove my golf cart over some of it, and I personally didn't see, I didn't feel uncomfortable with it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I didn't get underneath and start
Scott,
chopping, but.
Scott, this next stage, do you have a kind of a ballpark figure of what it may cost?
Well, the engineering is there for you, and I provided the invoice for the drawings.
Right.
Which is $8,600.
Dollars.
Right.
The cost, I don't even want to guess,
Whew.
but I would anticipate it's gonna be just right around $500,000.
Oh, I see, to do the whole deal.
Yes.
So the 8,600 covers the
The engineering drawing for the entire structure.
structure? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Are we budgeted for that 500,000?
Well, no, what our plan is, Glenn, is to take that out of our unassigned reserves, I think,
Oh,
at this point.
okay.
So
And
that's.
it should be reserves.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's the reason we want to get a handle on those reserves.
Okay,
Because we're gonna hit them with this, we're gonna hit them with a big expense.
okay.
But it seems, I think we agreed that it seems like an appropriate thing to be doing.
I mean, at some point, it's gonna have to get redone anyway.
Right.
Yes,
Yep,
it will.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And I have to confess, I did try to read through on this on the computer, but it was not easy going, and I really would like to have the chance to study this
Yeah, yeah.
in black and white in front of me.
Mhm.
And,
Well, I liked it because for those of us who don't know anything, it was nice to see what they meant on some of the terminology, the stringers and the piles and so you have some idea of what they're talking about.
I can remember my first boss telling me when I was making a drawing, the guy in the shop's gotta figure out what you're telling him to do. More information is better than not enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, they did a good job.
yeah, they did.
how old is that boardwalk?
Well,
16 years,
16?
Yeah.
give or take.
And
8 or 10 months.
And they are proposing to put in stuff that will last longer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, so.
Well, since that period of time, products have improved.
Right.
Yeah,
Marine grade lumber has improved. And as you see, the bridges,
Yeah.
the boardwalk's constructed the same way.
mhm,
Mostly 2x2s, or 3x3s, 2x6s, and 2x4s. Now remember, all the stringers on the bridges now are 3x8s,
mhm,
which really reinforces those structures.
mhm.
Although we have beautiful bridges now, we do have another issue. But with every improvement, you get an issue. You know that, don't you?
That's right.
No, crossing those bridges versus
Oh,
that boardwalk,
wonderful.
what a difference.
What a difference, it's wonderful.
Huge.
Yep, it's huge, it's great.
Huge.
Yes.
Are you gonna tell us what the other issue is?
Well, it has something to do with what we have going on in the rest of the community.
Well, let's
But
finish up
it's-
on this part of
Yeah.
Scott's report. Are there any other questions about the preliminary engineering report and where we're going with this?
No.
No other questions? Okay, Scott, continue on.
All right.
Do we need a motion to pay the
The 8,600?
8,600?
That's what I'm asking for because
Okay,
we're going to need to get that to go to permitting, and we know that permitting will
Okay.
take 4 months.
thank you, Teresa, for jumping on that. So, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to pay for the engineering study.
Well,
Well,
This is the
Drawings.
drawings. This is the drawings.
I'll make
Yeah.
a motion to pay for the engineering drawings so we can move forward with this project.
At the cost of,
Second.
80?
at the cost of $8,600.
$8,600.
Okay, Joe made the motion, seconded by John. Any further questions, comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0. Okay, Scott?
This is
continue
getting
on.
real easy. The next section is CDD funding. We've already discussed that during the treasurer's report.
Yeah.
Yep.
Although I did include the O&M agreement for all of you, so you have a copy of it.
Yep.
Again, it's great reading when you have time.
All right. John, you should be aware that we are asking for an amendment to the O&M agreement to move the retainer up from $90,000 to $120,000, and that was passed. And Scott's gonna draft what we have to send to the board, and Frank's gonna take care of getting it to the board. So, that's taken care of. Continue.
Next section, sidewalk repair report and cost estimates.
Yeah.
Now, as we know, to replace a section of sidewalks is normally $500 per section. Okay? So what I did was, I'm dealing with a new company, it's called Pump and Spray Company, where they use not only grinding, but then restructure the bed material around plant roots with a foam. And that allows the sidewalk to become level again. Now, what we found out with the inventory, and these are all the areas to lift, level, stabilize, and/or grind, we have 130 areas that need to be addressed, keeping in mind we have 12 miles of sidewalk. So that's not a big number, but to do the work will be. And what I would recommend, and what I'm having the vendor do now, is to give me a breakdown per neighborhood, so we can spread it out over the next year. That would be my proposal, so I wanted to get this in front of you. I don't want you to approve the 46,000. What I want to do is break this down for you, but I want you to know that this is one of those items that we have to take care of the assets we have. And this is one of those items that we're gonna have to address.
Scott, in looking at the pictures, how is a determination made between whether grind or lift? Is it how far out of whack it is? Is that-
Quarter of an inch. If it's over a quarter of an inch, it's considered a trip hazard.
Yeah. But then, no, but I'm saying then I mean, some of these, one of these says stab and grind, another says lift.
Yes,
What creates those differences? I assume some are less expensive to do than others.
that is correct. It averages $350 per section that we're doing instead of the 500. But what creates the difference is oak trees, the root systems, and the roots actually lifting up on the pad. Or or there's a fracture of the actual sidewalk itself, or if it exceeds the grinding process, which can't be over a half an inch. Once you go over a half an inch, you're gonna have to use foam and a leveling plan or replace the actual sidewalk.
So it depends on how far out of kilter it
Yes.
is that it?
And the thing you have is when you have one expansion joint elevated,
Yep.
you have two pads that you have to work with. That's what happened when we were replacing them last year.
Scott, what are they saying is the life of the foam when you do it that way? No, I mean, not the life of the foam, but the sidewalk itself not
Being out
moving
again.
and coming out again in the next 3-4 years. Did they give it
Yeah,
time
but
frame?
they're looking at a 10-year plan, but they're using this successfully in Cape Coral on seawalls.
And
so-
they feel that there's history of at least 3, 4, 5 years?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, what you're doing is ultimately, as we discussed before, once these trees continue to grow, we may have to actually remove the pad and cut the tree roots out and reinstall concrete. So,
I don't know how many of you were here at the last CDD meeting where they talked about the damage in Gateway about live oaks. But they handed one resident an $8,000 bill for repairing the piping and infrastructure in their yard, because that was on their side of the pipe. And it's getting excessively expensive. And I know, I love live oaks, but I'm not a tree hugger to state that. I think it's an issue that's going to never end. And we have so many live oaks planted so close to sidewalks and so close to each other. The fellow down at the University of Florida says 50 feet between centers on live oaks is proper. And we've got them 25 feet apart, we've got them 5 feet from sidewalks. Cutting the roots out is not gonna stop them from regrowing and doing the same thing again. I think if we start working and fixing sidewalks, we need to somehow educate our residents who love live oaks that we have too many, and removing them would not be a bad thing. In fact, would be good for the ones that we leave. That gives them better root structure, better growth, and we'll have less damage over the long course. I think it's a long-term thing, and I know people love live oak trees, many of them do. But I think it's a situation that we have to ultimately face throughout all of Pelican Preserve. In Gateway, the roots are actually even wrapping around the boxes where the instruments are for measurement, and they can't even get to them anymore. They've just decided it's cheaper to bypass everything, cut it out, and put all new infrastructure in. But the bills are getting very expensive here, and I know Ron has said, well, we're not close to that yet. And I agree with that, but we're gonna get there. So from a long-term perspective, I think we need to look at the sidewalk, but we also need to look at the live oak issue.
Well, you're gonna do it by neighborhood, correct?
yes, and where you see most of the neighborhood damage, now this does not include the new areas, so it does not include Casella,
No.
Prado, Pistoia. This is only everything that has been built from Matarita all the way
In.
to the front entrance. The greatest area is the oldest area. That's where the most of the problems are that can be corrected. Some of it will be with leveling, some of it will be with grinding. But if you're looking at the neighborhoods that have the most potential or actual trip hazards, it is that northern section of Pelican. Everything north of Pelican Preserve Boulevard.
Joe, with regard to the live oaks, do you have any recommendations? Should we be developing a plan to at least survey them and find out what the problem is, how big the problem is?
I think we should develop a plan, and I stated this at the CDD meeting, and I'm not sure, I think I sent a notice out, but the state of Florida passed a new law last year that
It did.
allowed people to take live oaks out without having to get permits and not having to go get city approval. Fort Myers has protected live oaks vehemently, and their rules just don't count anymore. You don't need all that stuff. So I think we should have a plan, and we should look at it. If you go down Pelican Preserve Boulevard, that island is beautiful, but you have live oaks every 25 feet or less. And we could take half of those out, and people would kill me for that. They'd hang me from a live oak, I guess.
No, Avila removed a lot of their oaks.
Karina took them all out.
Yeah, and-
except for people that were vehemently adamant about leaving them in, but we took every one of them out because there wasn't, I think they figured there were like 10 live oaks that were planted in an area that they would be okay.
But I'm saying that if we looked at, say, Avila with their sidewalk issue versus my Verona, I think you'll find Verona's got more issues because we still have those live oaks, and maybe we could look at eliminating some of those live oaks so we don't have this repair all the time on these sidewalks too.
Well, the live
Sorta-
oaks are gonna grow over, they're gonna grow out, and
Yeah, but,
over 10 years, people won't know that there was ever one missing.
yeah.
Scott, how is Portofino in your report?
I'll have to look at that. It's
I
not
mean,
that
'cause
bad. Portofino, but
'Cause
keep in
been
mind,
ad-
we've done
been
work.
addressing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not on the
Yeah.
board now, but, for 10 years, we took issue, we would cut roots
Yeah,
before they got there. We would, inject stuff into the roots so that would not damage the sidewalk. So, I mean, our HOA has been aggressively addressing the oaks. And we did remove a few, but we did not do what Bellagio did, or maybe what you did. We're not gonna be that aggressive. Some of the people like them, and we watched the sidewalk and had issues with it.
And we've done the same in Verona, where we removed only where needed.
Only when needed,
Yeah.
but we addressed it, tried to get in front of it, and I thought we did a decent job.
well, and my recommendation is not to get too drastic.
Right, I agree.
But
Yeah.
this is a maintenance item for 12 miles of sidewalk.
It is, and you
This is
addressed
not,
it that way.
this is not something that, it's something to be aware of and potentially something to plan for the future.
Right.
But redoing all the landscaping at this point in time, I don't know how cost-effective that will be. And the problem with removing oaks is you have to be keenly aware of where they're at, because then you have the decomposition of the stump underground. That's going to create other problems.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a major
So.
issue. I think nature has helped us in some regards, but we've had them die or blow over, but we've been aggressive in planting new ones. And I think we ought to be really careful before we replace some of these trees.
Whoever did the landscaping for Prado planted 2 new ones in every house, one in front and one in back.
Yeah.
Well,
Some
I
of
mean, is
those
the
are
one in
actually
back an
olive
issue?
trees.
It's not an issue, but I'm gonna ask to have it removed.
Why?
Cause I wanna put a Bismarck palm back there.
Did you write the check that?
No.
And just so
I'm on
this,
the ACC committee. Can you tell me I can't?
so the committee's aware of it, we're not replacing hardwoods.
Yeah.
Just so
Yeah.
you know. In fact, at times, depending on the location, we don't even replace palm trees. Because of the amount of plant material we have, it's not necessary.
Yeah, so if it falls down, it's gone.
Yes.
Good. It's ironic, because the kid's out front of my house today, city of Fort Myers, and he is taking that route out of that water box access.
I see.
Is it a job? I mean, that route, and, I've been asking them to do it for 2 or 3 years, but he's gonna fix it, but you can see how invasive these trees are, when they get in there.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Okay. Scott, the question is, this $46,000, do we have anything in the budget for this work?
Not that much money, no.
Not that much?
But we do have some funding, and what I'm gonna do is break it down by neighborhood.
Yeah,
yes,
I wanted you to know that this was coming.
yes, okay,
I didn't want to spend
Okay.
a lot of time on it, but
Right.
wanted to get you the information
okay.
that we do have 130 areas out there that are going to have to be addressed.
Yeah,
Okay.
over time.
thank you for the heads up, okay. Any
That-
more questions of Scott on that issue? Okay,
Next one is a project that we did plan for and fund below the line, and that was the replacement of the trellises on the structures at the entrance along tree line. Now, this proposal came from the same company that did the trellises out on Colonial and Tree Line. So it's the same company, and the problem has been finding a company that will do this work. So they've gone through probably 6 different companies to subcontract this through, just because the people working in wood and building, it's hard. People won't even bid on this right now. They're too busy. Too busy with building. So this was the one contractor I found. It happens to be the same contractor we've used. But
so,
if you want me to continue to look, I will. But as you see, it's not inexpensive. As you recall, the ones out front were close to $30,000, and that was back in believe, yeah,
2017.
it was in 17.
Mhm.
So this is 4 years later, and this represents all the trellises out front.
And the total cost is,
$35,000,
$58.
yep.
I think that trellises make a nice entrance,
Yes.
and redoing it, I'm all in favor of it.
and you say we did provide for this in the budget?
Yes, we did,
Thank
You want a motion?
Well, you,
I-
to proceed.
yeah,
No, go ahead,
we can
go
have a
ahead.
motion and then we can have discussion. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we accept Scott's budget to replace the trellises, et cetera.
The cost of
Of
$35,058, okay? Do I have a second for that?
I'll second.
That's second, okay, now we have discussions. Teresa, you have a,
My concern was, at the end of the proposal, it says they reserve the right to change if we don't accept in 21 days. It's been 27 days.
I know,
Are
I
we
told
gonna
him
have a
that.
problem?
Don't think so.
Okay.
In fact, when I go back to him, I'm gonna let him know that this committee has approved it, but it has to go to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay,
So, they know that.
okay.
d-
Just for my,
Yes.
why does that go to the Board of
if it's
Supervisors?
in the budget. I have
It's
to-
over $10,000.
Oh, okay, all right, good. All right, I got you.
Yeah, I was,
They gotta put their stamp of approval on it.
even though it was in the budget,
Yes,
Will that be at this coming meeting then, or we have to wait a month?
we have to wait.
we have to wait a month.
Okay.
So that's why I gotta get back with the vendor and let him know.
You tell them the way the stock market's going, the price should drop. We have cash.
Yeah. Any-
We borrow it?
Any further discussion of this subject? We have a motion on the floor, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Okay, Scott?
The next section, easy one. This is a conversion project that FPL is going to do. They own all the streetlights in all the neighborhoods. They're gonna do a conversion to LED. So the increased cost to our electric bill, let's see, I got it in here. It's actually gonna increase by $109 a month, but we're projecting savings to exceed that on electrical use. And I do know Gateway is looking into doing this too.
And so the payback is effectively immediate, is that what
Yes.
you're telling me?
Yes.
That we're actually going to save as much as as they add to the bill?
Yes, we have 307 streetlights.
Yeah, I saw that.
So
Ooh.
307
Seven.
streetlights saving 30%
Yeah.
will get us our return.
This is the lights in the communities and along the boulevards.
Boulevard's already been changed out to LED. Those are owned by the CDD.
Right.
Okay, so these are the ones within the Carina and Prado and.
Correct. But Chris had to sign off on it because it is a long-term agreement with the CDD because the CDD funds that expense.
I hope I still have that low yellow light instead of a bright white light.
No, you're not going to have a low yellow light. I'm sorry. But here's the trick. You can always shield that light.
Why?
If it's
Live with
shining into your bedroom window.
Okay.
He stays up late anyways, this guy.
7:45. Okay,
All right, so
so there's nothing we have to approve on this?
There is not.
Okay.
Purely informational value.
Okay.
Rumble strip costs, the next section, we'll skip and save that
That's
for the safety
and
committee.
security, yep.
The last one from me today is the contracts for painting the gatehouse, all the front structures, and the low wall at the entrance along tree line, which is desperately needed. And one of the vendors actually took the time to go through, take photographs, show the damage to the stucco, where the stucco repairs are exactly going to be repaired and the paint that they're going to use. So that was McLeod's. They were the vendor that I would recommend that you consider, primarily because of the cost and the time they spent putting together the proposal. The other vendors, Elias Brothers, I was a little concerned there because of their price. It was excessive, and Noel Painting, which has been used by Gateway, their challenge is they only bid on the actual guardhouse. So the guardhouse was $7,352, but they didn't include the small structures, which I don't know why, but they did not. So if they did, it would probably be around the same price as the first vendor. Although they did give me a price on the 10-foot wall past the entry, but that is not owned by the CDD.
Well, yeah, I was a little confused in looking at this
Yes.
chart. First place, it appeared that there was only one bid for the wall, but that's not true. In other words, the wall is included in McLeod's and Elias Brothers?
The low walls, yes.
They are included?
Yes, all the front structures are included, including, it's probably about a 3.5-foot wall that runs behind the plant material and around the trellises that are right behind the fountain area.
So that's
Or
in,
not fountain, monument.
that is in the 14,985 that McLeod
Correct,
bid?
correct.
Okay. I was just also kind of wondering why there was such a, do you have any
Yeah.
idea why there was such a significant difference in their bids and the one from Elias Brothers?
Not at all. Can't tell you why. I haven't used Elias Brothers in probably 6 years, but I do know that they were never the lowest bid on the table when I've used them.
Well, they're the ones who are doing all the work in the villa,
Yeah,
right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, which is a huge job.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So the Noel, he's 16 plus 7, right?
actually, no, he is just the 7,352 without the front structures. That's just the gatehouse.
Okay.
The 16,000 is, as you see, it says front stucco wall PPCA. That's owned by the master. So that was not supposed to be included in this
Shouldn't have been.
proposal, but it was, so
Oh,
I
did-
showed it.
Okay.
So you're asking for the approval of the McLeod bid at 14,985, is that right?
Yes, which will include the 2 bridges and the front wall structures.
When you say bridges?
There's 2 bridges that need to be painted.
Okay,
One is at the, right before you enter Viadana.
yeah, okay,
That's
Yeah.
the one bridge. The other bridge is, as goes over the flowway into Casella.
Yeah.
That's the other bridge. And if you
Okay.
look at that one, that has virtually no paint on it at the water line.
okay.
And the one over at by Viadana is not looking that great either.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one over by Trentino,
That
we
was, it
painted
was
that, but
already
we
done.
used, yes,
That was already done.
that's already done.
Yep, looks very nice.
Scott, I have a question. They're quoting super paint. I got very much involved with paint when we were looking at it in our community. And I had paint contractors, I had with Sherwin-Williams representatives and the Florida Paints, which had a different name at that time. Both of them came out and made presentations. A number of folks actually chose the Florida paint. They thought it was a better quality paint. But the super paint, as I recall, was a 7-year paint. Sherwin-Williams has a 10-year warranty paint. It costs a little more, but those of us that did paint our houses felt that the higher 10-year warranty paint was worth the slightly increase in price, because most of it was labor. Is there have we talked to anybody other than the paint contractor concerning the type of paints they might recommend? Because both Sherwin-Williams and Florida Paints will send representatives out to Pelican Preserve to look at the structures.
Yeah.
And they will work with the painters. And the painters don't really care which paint they use unless they have a better markup on one over the other. But we found a significant difference between the 7 and the 10-year warranty paints.
Well,
The-
aren't they
it's-
quoting here Sherwin-Williams?
That's Super
Yeah.
Paint, which is
Yeah.
a 7-year warranty paint.
Versus,
And Florida Paints is actually manufactured in Florida, for Florida. Whereas Sherwin-Williams is manufactured for a broad spectrum in the United States. There's a significant difference.
okay,
Um,
I wouldn't know that.
And in fact, the ACC has all the documents for the Florida paints and the color code, so residents can just go up and say, I'm using one over the other, and they automatically approve that.
So
I
you
mean,
think that,
I mean, I can do that, but my experience in Florida, both commercially and residential, it really doesn't matter the paint you use. You're still going to be painting every 5 to 7 years. Even though they have a 10-year, the paint does deteriorate and start chalking, so it'll be interesting what Florida Paint does when these structures are 8, 9 years old. Are they going to honor that warranty, or is there something within the warranty, normal wear and tear, that they
There's always
determine that
normal wear.
voids the warranty?
Actually, they painted all the original houses in Pelican Preserve.
Yeah.
That was WCI's paint contractor until they went bankrupt. And when WCI reformed and came back, Sherwin-Williams had the contract. I suspect there was a financial issue there and whatever it went. But they painted all the original houses in the town center, I believe. And folks I talked to over in those communities were very pleased with their original paint jobs. And they lasted quite a long time. And quality of paint has changed since then, too.
Well, do the warranties say that if the paint starts to flake, they'll come back and repaint it?
What I did was I had the paint contractor, Florida Paint, came out and worked with the painter. And they inspected the paint, checked the millage, made sure it was put on properly, pointed out to the painter what wasn't done, and the warranty is from Florida Paint, because the contractor's here today and gone tomorrow. So we went, instead of dealing with a contractor who was making all kinds of promises, we went right with the paint company. They specified painters, and we
Who
got
was your
quotes.
contract with?
Mine was with a guy by
No,
Mario.
so wait a minute, your contract was with the painter, not Florida Paint. I mean, they're not a turnkey.
I
I'm not familiar with that.
I have information from Florida Paints and Sherwin-Williams with their guarantees written in it.
don't
I
they
have-
prorate it though after a
Yes.
certain
There's
time?
pro rating,
Yes.
yeah, we just felt the 10-year warranty paint seemed better, but I have like a 30-page contract from Florida Paints, and I have something equivalent to that for Sherwin-Williams also. We just kind of like the Florida Paint representatives seem to be more up to speed.
Do you think the 14,000 would increase much by going with Florida Paint?
I don't really know anymore, because this has been 4 years ago when we did this, and currently, I don't know what the pricing would be. It's a question that may just be prudent to check. And I'm just throwing it out there for comment. If we feel comfortable with this, then we can do it.
Any other comments on this?
Could you ask them if they use Florida Paint versus?
I could go back and ask them to rebid it.
Yeah,
I can do that.
with Florida Paint?
Florida Paint or the upgraded on the Sherwin-Williams, so they match.
See if I have
Well, Scott, why don't you take it back, and,
Is it gonna delay the getting it done?
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
of course it will.
yeah.
of course, yeah.
I'll bring it back when it's
Well,
ready.
well, my feeling is that we
It
could,
used to be Scott Paint was the name of the paint company. Scott Paint is who WCI contracted and painted the original structures in Pelican Preserve. Scott was bought about 2 or 3 years ago by Florida Paints and folded into that.
What I'm wondering is whether we could structure this in such a way to have Scott go back and just get some advisory information from
I
the
can do that.
contractors.
You need approval from us, right?
Yes.
Why don't we just increase the thing a little bit on the motion, and if Florida Paint has a better deal or something like that, it's already approved. Like a not to approve number, or
Like-
not to exceed number.
17,000 or something, another $3,000 or so?
I have no idea, I'm not familiar with Florida Paint.
Why don't I'll just do some work on it.
Okay.
Don't delay it.
Well,
I don't want to delay it.
I didn't realize looking at those pictures how bad it was.
yeah,
This company did a great job. I
Yeah.
really commend you for all the
Yeah.
work that you did and
Yeah.
they put into this. Very good report.
okay, well,
I think we have a motion on the floor.
do we?
No.
Not for the
I
paint.
don't think so.
Oh,
Not
okay.
for the paint. I do not believe we have motion on the floor.
Table? I'll get
No.
back to you in a month.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'd like to make a motion for using, is it McLeod's bid?
Yes.
Not to exceed, what is that, 14?
Yeah, yes.
14,985.
16, or 17,985, and let them review the
Okay.
Florida Paint. If it's,
Or the 10-year Sherwin-Williams.
Second.
That's a second.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good way to do it.
Further discussion?
Florida Scott Paint has 10 and Sherwin-Williams has 10. I don't think the cost of the paint would be that much more. And I haven't lived in Florida, so Scott's advice
you
on
want to reduce it?
Yeah, no,
It's
okay.
financial.
No, no,
I
no.
don't have a dime.
Okay, so the motion, let's make it 18,000 to make it round, John.
Okay.
Just to, not to exceed 18,000. And, now, I guess that has to go to the board as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's another motion that needs to go to the board. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0,
Scott, I sent
it
you the
passes.
contact information.
Thank you.
Scott, anything further?
Oh, the only other things I have
Or
deal
when we
with
get
the
to the-
safety and security work.
Okay, we'll get to that. All right.
Very good.
Ponds Work Group, I guess I'm the assigned person on the Ponds Work Group. We are still wrestling with Lennar about the aeration in these 5 ponds back, back in Cypress Grove, where they're supposed to have put the aeration in. They didn't do it properly. These are the ones that Bob keeps talking about, where they had them plugged into people's houses and things of that sort. Apparently what they have done is Lennar has gone out to the supplier to get an estimate, which is, maybe they're gonna do something, but they keep saying they're gonna do it, and they don't. And Bob is working with Tony Pierce to see whether we're gonna have to take some legal action against Lennar in order to get them to do this work. But apparently it's an ongoing thing. There are 5 ponds that are involved. And that's one of the things. The downspout project in Corona is effectively done, or just about done.
I think Karina's just is done.
Is done.
And
And none of the people who had this opportunity to have something done with their side yards picked
that's
up.
that's what I've heard.
They didn't, none of them wanted
That's
to.
what Bob told me that
Wha-
last
wha-
week, that
wha-
nobody chose to do
No,
the
nobody
front
chose
yard
to do that.
drainage.
Yep, get the drainage, special drainage. He also mentioned that we're using money from the bond funds for the aeration on the golf course pond and the one and we have another pond near Colonial. And apparently there is money in the bond funds, and it appears he's working with Tony Pierce to see whether we can get money from the bond fund to do that, so we won't have to pay for it. It's an expensive deal.
And Tony brought that up at the CDD meeting
Right.
last week.
Mm-hmm, yeah. But it's, I was surprised at how much money we're talking about, $170,000. But apparently they're working on doing that.
What would be the pond and the golf course we're doing? Is that,
That's the one between, that you look out from Ravenna and you see, and it looks out over that huge pond.
oh, is
So
that-
there's a
that-
lot,
Driving
that's
range.
the driving range pond,
Oh.
it's, you know, so there must
Yeah.
be a lot of aerators going into that pond. Because it is a big pond.
Big pond.
It's the biggest one we have. And then there's another one that really, apparently we can't see, and over towards Colonial, that we have responsibility for. Don't know why, but apparently we do. And again, bond fund money, we're gonna use that for that. So, any question on the Ponds Group report? I can't answer it if there is.
That's
Bob is in Costa Rica,
Oh, geez.
and we hope he's
Poor
doing
guy.
okay, yeah.
he's quarantined.
Yeah, well, he may get quarantined when he comes back to the US, unfortunately. Okay, we'll move on to, to golf cart registration. And,
Once again, I had
Yes.
a resident complain.
yes,
If you go to one of the concerts or something that a lot of residents attend up at the town center, and you look around, there are a lot of golf courses that,
Cart.
golf carts that don't have stickers.
yes.
And I was told that our roving patrol guy is supposed to put letters on those carts that they're supposed to get stickers. And it hasn't been getting done, at least to this resident's satisfaction, so.
There's no enforcement.
Well, again, this comes down, well, one thing, Scott, they're supposed to be doing that, is that right?
They are.
Well, and her concern wasn't the fact that they don't get, stickers,
That
but
they're not,
they
they're
don't
not
have to show
responding.
proof
Yeah,
of
and,
insurance.
and this is, you know, we were talking before, a little bit before the meeting about the need for an enforcement, and we don't have it. It's something that that I think the board, the community board really needs to work on, is to get an enforcement thing so we can get that done. No question about it. There are a load of them, people who just don't bother. And surprisingly, there are a lot of people who don't even bother to get their cart path sticker, and they just keep driving, so, in any event.
I was unaware of that, but.
Yeah, I think there are.
Maybe we should form a police force golf cart inspections.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know they're out
Joking.
there, yeah.
I
It's a
don't know.
matter of forcing people to do it,
Yeah.
and we haven't had a lot of luck with that.
Couldn't they get a red light, flashing light on top of the golf cart?
Yeah, I want a gun too.
Scott, any comments on that?
Well, I'm all in favor of forming a posse that is, trained by the sheriff's department, and you're gonna report to them directly, not me. And that's going to be the case, but the liability risk is all on the individual that doesn't register their cart, believe it or not,
There you go.
and who doesn't have the insurance.
Yeah.
They jeopardize their home, because how we look at it is, and we take the direction from the GSCDD.
Yeah.
They have another tier of insurance that is required. If they don't have that tier of insurance, and they get into an accident that, injury, God forbid, death, they're gonna come to the GSCDD and go, well, we require carts to be registered in this insurance. So as far as we're concerned, that cart's not driving legally on district roads. Well, that could jeopardize their own insurance and the coverage that they have. So again, it's a vicious circle of, we're trying to get the owners to register their carts and to carry the proper insurance. Enforcement, that's an entirely different issue. So, and eventually that will have to be addressed.
Yeah.
But again, statute drives that, and how we have to handle enforcement, and a committee that has to be appointed by the board, and a process that has to be ratified by the board. those things have to be put in place.
Scott, there's a lot of golf carts that are not used on the golf course.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
My question, did Lennar give away golf carts with the sale of their homes?
Yes. Initial buyers got golf carts,
I
some
mean,
of them.
that's where the
Wow.
issue probably should have been enforced.
Yeah.
You know, and how do you do that? with-
Well, except the problem is, John, it's an annual thing. So you'll see some of those carts have stickers on them, but
They're not-
they're from prior years.
Sure.
Okay,
And so
I-
people are not
Renewing.
re-upping each
Perhaps
year.
the letter should state something.
I don't own a golf cart,
Well-
so I should
Yeah.
keep them on.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing that started too. We've had one report of this, but I mean, this is what happens in today's world. We had one individual peel off a new sticker from another owner's cart
Oh, jeez.
and take the sticker.
Oh,
Gosh.
God.
Now, if you see the latest report on the news, the same thing's going on with automobiles.
Yeah.
So if you check your registration sticker, you may have last year's because somebody already peeled it off and is using it. The police have started to recognize this. This is
That's
the world we
$60.
live in.
It's $60.
Yeah, well, it's a $500 fine if they catch you.
They ought to put
But
you in
again,
jail
this
if
is
they
the
catch
world
it.
we live in, and what we're trying to do, being a litigious
Sticker on the license plate?
No.
Yeah.
Yes, the
society,
little-
we're
that
trying
little
to
sticker-
protect
that
the
little
word.
sticker on the license plate that
Put some
prevents them
comment
from
in the letter
stopping
that
you.
we have been putting on golf carts that says you're driving illegally.
I
and you
always
can-
put mine on, but I
and
never
if you
checked
have
it.
an accident,
Mine might be gone.
it's a financial issue for you, and it can be enforced by the CDD if you go.
You know,
We got, we,
Rather than
all
being
the,
real
all the
polite.
communication that we put out on golf cart registration, what our responsibility is to communicate it to our owners on a regular basis, which we do. They assume the liability. It's just like when they let their grandkids sit on their lap and drive the cart.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know how you stop.
Again, that is not a district or an association item, that's a civil item that has to be handled by the police. So we can't cross that line either.
well, but those things are in the golf cart rules that the
Yes.
district put out.
Yes,
You have to have a sticker, and you can't have a kid under 16 driving the golf cart.
that's right.
Those things are, those are things that they're part of the district golf cart rules.
But again, we don't have a process in
The
place
place to
for
enforce it.
a roving patrol to pull over a golf cart.
Right.
That's an entirely different, yeah, I like that. Yeah, okay, we'll get a light bar for my truck, how's that? I'll chase it down.
You need you could budget a golf cart, roving golf cart that we can buy for
See,
Securitas.
and of course, the CDD doesn't have any enforcement rules at all.
None, and they won't.
And they won't.
Mhm.
They leave it up to the individual communities to have their own enforcement rules.
Yes.
So even though that's a CDD requirement, it's something that if we put in enforcement rules for the association, we may want to include it in our enforcement rules.
If,
Great idea.
I have a golf cart garage, but no golf cart. So if the budget would want to buy me a golf cart with a light on it, I'll volunteer to do the patrols.
I'll take a shift.
You guys are
We'll
crazy.
look for
I'm gonna
some-
leave that up to the two of you to work that out.
You better learn jujitsu or something.
Well,
My question would be, can we put a couple comments in the letter that we do leave on golf carts when that occurs and just say, these are the legal liabilities you could face without having this?
Sure, we can modify it.
Do we actually put the letter on?
Yes, we put it right on their steering wheel, right where the clip where normally the scorecard
Golf
goes.
cart.
It's a double-sided document. One
Yep.
side has language that is included in the resolution on golf cart use on district roads. The other half is the actual registration sheet that somebody who receives this should be able to just flip it over, fill it out, bring it to our office, which we've have had happen several times since we started.
have you?
Absolutely.
It has had some effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's good.
We've registered over 700 carts in the community this calendar year.
Good.
was impressed. I got a notice once. We just didn't get the new sticker. We were just late. We went up, there was a huge crowd. We went home and never got back. So it was a great reminder for us because we do follow the law. But the letter was very nice, and it was, I just think maybe if we put a few more forceful things in it and not be maybe so nice, it'll catch somebody's attention. Maybe not, but I mean, and I'm not a threatening thing, but just say legally, these are the things you could suffer. Just let them see what the liability is.
The ones that don't want to do it will still do it.
That's
Well,
right.
I agree,
People will
Glenn.
never get it if they can get away with it.
Anybody will take a sticker off somebody else's
It's
car.
pretty sad.
It's
That's sad.
I'm gonna look at my cars.
The language included does talk, and this is actually included in the
Yeah.
resolution, that penalties such as loss of privileges,
Yeah.
loss of the ability to use the carts on district roads, all of that is included in that letter.
In that letter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you say the state can come do something, that might catch somebody.
Well,
No, you
Anyway,
Well,
Okay,
I
let's-
like the idea that they could be sued and lose their house and everything
Yeah,
else.
I think something like,
I mean, because-
if that can happen, I think that should be in the letter.
That's what
it's-
insurance
yeah,
is
but-
supposed to protect you from.
But
and
we're
if you
not
don't
dealing
have it-
with, we're not dealing with 14-year-olds here. We're dealing with adults.
we
Yeah,
think,
you know
when
what,
act
the-
like
come on.
14-year-old kids.
You know, read your insurance policy. If you don't know that if you don't have insurance today, there could be legal issues, you shouldn't even be in our community, sorry.
Oh,
It's the way I
Glenn,
look
you
at it.
give people way too much credit.
If I may, a wise old man told me at one time, the only difference between me being in my 60s and a 13-year-old was that I had a lot of experience perfecting my inappropriate behavior.
That's probably a good point.
So, with that in mind,
yeah.
Let's move on.
Okay, let's move
Move
on. We
on.
need to move on. Okay, front gate entrance rules. I think the purpose of this was, we made some changes to the rules, but are the rules working now, or are you still getting complaints from people? Everything seems to be working?
This year is far improved over last year.
Okay,
Good.
good, okay. But we had at least one real estate agent who wasn't happy with the rules, is that right?
Would you like me?
Yes, yes. Why don't you put your name
Yes.
in, Chris?
This is Chris Santos, Council Management with Community Association Management Team. We have had feedback from one particular realtor in the community with a certain dissatisfaction with the gate access procedures. I believe that was perhaps more of a misunderstanding as to what those existing procedures are. Management did have regular correspondence with that individual in an effort to educate as to what those processes, what those options are, whether as a realtor or any other resident of the community, as he does happen to be a resident of the community. Invitation has been extended for him to speak with management at the office if there were further questions or elaboration needed. It has been quiet since those correspondence.
Good. Good
Sounds
job.
good. If you can keep him quiet, you can keep anybody quiet.
Again, we are happy to assist.
Good.